Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We are joined by a longtime friend of the pod, welcoming back to the show. Somehow he hasn't been on in 5 years, Grandmaster Jesse Kraai. I will introduce him in a minute. Just wanted to give thanks to our presenting chess education sponsors, Chessable.com. Jesse Kraai himself is a Chessable author. He's got videos on times, the dojo repertoire, Jesse, of course, being the co-founder and sensei of the ChessDojo learning cohort. Among Jesse's other distinctions, he's a 5-time New Mexico State champion, Maryland State champion. He's an author. He's also a beloved presenter on YouTube. I always love his book reviews in particular. He's joining me after a busy chess summer. He recently won the U.S. Senior Open with a score of 5.5 out of 6. This qualifies him for the U.S. Senior Closed, big tournament next year that both he and I recently interviewed the winner of, Grandmaster Alex Fishbein. Jesse, of course, interviewed him for the always informative and entertaining Dojo Talks podcast / YouTube show. Jesse also recently competed in the Washington International, as a couple other recent guests have, as chance would have it. And I am excited to welcome back to the program Grandmaster Jesse Kraai. Let's bring him in. Jesse, it's been too long. Welcome back to the pod.
Great to be back.
So even though we haven't chatted for 5 years, Jesse, I'm always keeping up with you guys. One of my favorite YouTube recurring pieces of content are your book reviews, but I also love following you guys in tournaments as we record this. A shout out to Kostya. He's competing in the Maya Chess Open. You were saying before we started, not acquitting himself as well as we would like, right?
Yeah.
But the tournament's young and we know Kostya's strong, so he'll bounce back. But yeah, I love following your stuff. And one thing that really impresses me about you, Jesse, is you stay driven. You stay on top of the Chess Dojo curriculum. You're always reading new books, not just for your level, but for various levels. As we record this here on Tuesday, August 26th, you just posted yesterday a review of the new Grubinsky Tactics book that is quite challenging. And I'm curious, Jesse, if it's hard for you to stay motivated at times.
Mostly not. I generally enjoy studying and playing chess. Sometimes it's hard for me to do the hard work, like going over your games and doing some really deep stuff, say in the morning hours. But I'd say the biggest difficulty is finding the time, especially to get away to play the big tournaments, because like you, I have some kids and it's like, it's always a negotiation.
Right, for sure. And you're coming off a busy summer of chess. As we said in the intro, congrats on qualifying for the U.S. Senior Open.
Yeah.
Aside from the results, how did you feel like you actually played?
I feel like I've stepped it up. My chess was in a little bit of definitely like a down. I don't know if it was a downward spiral, but I just felt like, I was getting murdered by little Indian kids and I was not feeling good about it. There's a aspect of trauma, when you have a couple bad results, it starts getting in your head, and I studied really hard. And I also, actually, I'm sure many of your listeners will, have this kind of experience where you study really hard and then you have a poor result. And then it's like, oh, that didn't feel good, So I had a little bit of that going on. So it was really difficult, but I think I've turned the corner. In particular, I think I've gotten over my trauma of playing the little Indian kids. I've gotten over that trauma. I also had a trauma of like playing 2 rounds a day with a round like late in the day.
Yeah.
That used to drive me crazy, and it still kind of does. But I was just like, if I'm going to play the games I need to play against the people I want to play against, I have to get over that. I have to get over that little like psychological thing in my head and just do it.
Yeah, I know you're an extreme early bird, but do you...
Come on, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and so extreme. It's the tournaments that are extreme, Ben.
It's the tournament.
They're like 12 and 6 o'clock. Nobody. The day's already over at 12, noon o'clock. Hey, tournament organizer, let's have the round at 8 or 9. Then we can have dinner afterwards. Come on.
Yeah, no, and make the game shorter. And 6 o'clock, it's like, when are you supposed to eat dinner? If it's a 5-hour game, I'm 100% with you. But nonetheless, I mean, major feather in your cap to qualify for the U.S. Senior Closed next year, which, of course, both Dojo Talks and Perpetual Chess, as luck would have it, interviewed Alex Fishbein the same week. But I mean, he's like the man of the moment, just an amazing result. And talked about his training methods. What did you take away from what he's doing?
Well, I think the most important thing that he's doing that other seniors aren't doing is he's playing a lot of games.
100%.
And you actually were the one who turned me on to just maybe a really good piece of chess advice that he's taking to extreme. And that is, you told me when you came down to play in Maryland a couple years ago, you were like, yeah, John Donaldson was on my pod, and he said, in order to improve, you got to play at least 40 games a year. And you were like on a quest to play 40 games a year.
Those were innocent times then.
No, and I thought about that. I kind of resonated with me, and I was like, well, yeah, that's what you need, Jesse. And that's kind of like what everyone needs. And we even institute in the dojo. So now when I go to my page at the dojo, it says how many games out of 40 I've played in the last 365 days. So it's just always in my face whether I've hit that number or not. And I realize it's a huge deal to hit that number. And it's kind of cool also in the dojo, you know, if like you're lower rated, you can play at faster time control. So it's not that hard. But, you know, if you're IM or GM or something like that, you need to be playing at least like, you know, 40, 90, 30 games. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And it's really helped me recently just to be aware of that, you know, so I'm getting out there and I'm playing some of these events that normally I was afraid of because of those, you know, evening rounds. And we talked about the Indian kids, you know, so I got over that because I was like, dude, you got to follow Ben Johnson's advice. The Donaldson was right. You got to have 40 games. And when I talked to Feingold or Fishbein, he blew my mind because he was like, I've played 150 games or something just in this year.
Right.
Games. That's insane.
Yeah.
And he's still like working some, you know, he's not full on retirement or anything. And I was like, dang, buddy. So that's next level. And I don't know if you need to do that much, but it's definitely true that, you know, a lot of the, like, let's call them the legends, and you go play at the U.S. Senior Close, you play those legends. They're not out there playing the little Indian kids.
Yeah.
And they're a little rusty, and their game is different too. Like now you're playing the little Indian kids, you got to be way more tactically aware than we were back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's when you're going to cost you some points. It's also going to have your rating drop. That's all the other reason they don't want to play those kids, because then their rating will drop.
Yep.
So you get somebody like Fishbein or me coming in there, and our ratings are like low compared to the legends, but like, hey, we got a reasonable shot because we've actually been playing, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you because Alex, you know, he talked about these rigorous training methods, original in terms of what he called the post-mortem. And I'm sure that helps a lot. But first of all, he's putting in hours in a day. So whatever he did in sort of a deliberate manner is going to help. But also, I agree, the secret sauce is the playing. And I also did just want to clarify because I remember, of course, seeing you at that Maryland Open and talking about that. But then that was before my book had come out. So I went back and listened to that Donaldson one. And I think it was actually 60 games a year. He said, so it's even more.
Oh, no. Those were innocent times.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing I wanted to add on the Indian kids, obviously this is something we say with love, you know, if we're like stereotyping the Indian kids are very strong at chess. And when my team, the last tournament I did play, Jesse, was the U.S. Amateur Team East. And it was Joel Sneed, friend of the dojo and friend of Perpetual Pod, and my friend Donnie Ariel, and a couple of John Fernandez and another player, Uri. And I suggested the team name Underrated Indian Kids because I thought it would be funny when people see on the pairing sheet, who are they playing? What team? Oh, no, Underrated Indian Kid, because that's who everyone plays. But it was rejected. I was the only one. And of course, it was suggested out of love, jealousy.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But you're managing to make it work, Jesse. And so you're reading all these books and, of course, doing your work in the dojo, reviewing players' games, designing the curriculum, but working on your own chess. Reviewing games, obviously, is famously your holy grail. But what else do you do? Are you solving much?
I try to. And I really like that book, The Turbocharger Tactics. It's really two books, right? And I just did that review. And I think you talk to GMs, and Perfect Your Chess was like the book that people will mention. Even, you know, a lot of GMs aren't reading books, but they would talk about that book. They'd be like, yeah, Perfect Your Chess. A lot of people reading it once or twice, 3 times, because it had these amazing mind-stretching problems. And I really like this next one because it had it's the same quality of problems, like little chess poems where you're going to get something out of it. It's not just some computer driven variation. So yeah, I did that before I played the last couple tournaments. Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, that example you showed in the video, I would never have gotten that. And it wasn't like a
Right.
lot of variations. And I'll link to the video. You guys can check out. Jesse's reviews are always relatively short, about 10 minutes. But yeah, it wasn't clean, you know? And that's life. That's chess.
Right.
But we're used to those clean solutions. So I would have just like, you could give me an hour. And even though it's not that many moves. And
Right.
similarly, I don't think I would play it because you've got to be comfortable with giving up a rook and being like, well, his king is exposed.
Yeah.
And just hope for the best.
Yeah.
So, do you have a set amount of time when you're solving problems from a book like Turbocharge Your Chess, like 10 minutes per puzzle, or are you trying to get it right? What are you doing?
So in general, I try to stick in my games and in puzzles to like 10 minutes a move. So I'm playing a game. I think if you go more than 10 minutes, you've gone wrong.
Yeah.
But that book, there's definitely many ones I was like, well, I'm not going to stop. I want to go. So I'll write down, that I was already past 10 minutes. But several of those ones, I spent an hour plus on many of those problems. And sometimes I didn't even get it,
Yeah. So it sounds like it adds up to multiple hours a day. Is that fair?
Yeah, at the dojo, you can put how many hours a week you want to study, and then it'll tell you what to do based on how many hours. So I try to do 15 hours a week.
And so you input your rating as well?
Yeah, well, you're part of a cohort, right? And
Right.
so it tells you what to do based on what cohort you're in. And a cohort's just like 100-point spread.
Yeah. I'm a dojo member, but I have to admit, I've been so, as we discussed, I haven't been playing, so I haven't been studying. Yeah. And I remember that there was a curriculum for my level, but I wasn't sure. I know you guys have made like tons of advancements, so I wasn't sure if it was like something where you input a form and it like spits it out. It's more like you're in this cohort, these are the recommendations.
Well, that's actually an improvement we did to it, because there were a lot of people, particularly like in the weightlifting community, who were like, boss, I don't need just like all of the stuff. I need you to tell me when to do it.
Right.
And exactly. And it was hard. We had to really work on it to come up with an algorithm to generate, a weekly and daily view of what you were to do. And that's been really cool. That's been something we developed last year.
Yeah. And on that topic, you're looking fit, Jesse. And I saw on your Instagram when you won the US Senior Open, you gave a shout out to a fitness company in Baltimore. What was it called?
Yeah, I do. I've been doing CrossFit for several years, partly inspired by your bro, Greg Shahade.
Yeah.
Strong Chess. They were kind of talking to me about it. And so I started that years ago. And yeah, I've been doing that.
I think I got to get on it. I think it's time.
Dude, yeah,
first I mocked him. Now, years later, I'll be joining him. And with what you were saying about ChessDojo, does CrossFit give you a prescribed fitness regimen?
Well, actually, it's interesting. So we started the dojo, years ago, and a lot of the CrossFit stuff was a little bit in my mind when we did it, because like at the very beginning, I think a lot of people, like David Pruess, the co-founder, right, had a little bit of a sense of like, oh, everybody's different. Everybody's a special snowflake. It's not true that, that there could be such a thing as a universal training program. But I was just kind of thinking about the CrossFit example as like, you might all be a little different, sure. But if you follow this thing, and have just a little bit of discipline about it, you're going to get fit.
Right.
You're going to get fit. Yeah. And I would say just in terms of, I think there's all kinds of different ways to get fit, but something I do believe in is that in the maybe chess, but just in general, you're a little older, you gotta be, whether you're a man or a woman, you gotta be lifting heavy things.
Yeah.
At some point, you gotta be doing some strength work. And the other stuff is cool, but like you gotta be getting strong for your muscles, your mind, the whole thing. So I think that's been a really cool thing about the CrossFit, because it kind of introduced me to weightlifting. I had done some weightlifting before, but I wasn't doing it right. And now I'm kind of on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm slowly coming to the unfortunate realization that you're 100% right. I've always been fairly diligent about cardio, run 3-4 times a week. And in the last year or so, I got some home weights, but they're just little kettlebells. And it's just not enough. And because you can feel your body atrophying as the years go on. And Dr. Nick Vasquez, do you ever read Dr. Nick Vasquez's blog by any chance?
I haven't done.
Okay, you got to sub to him. He's a adult improver who I interviewed a while back, and Dr. John's chess clinic also did an interview with him. But he's like an emergency room medical doc. And shout out to Nick if you're listening. And he's a dad, and he's in his 50s. So not a lot of time, but he's like he's deep in the weeds, like trying to optimize his chess time, trying to get better. But he recently wrote a post about the importance of lifting weights. And actually, he recently started using creatine for the first time, which, correct me if I'm wrong, you're also doing, right?
Well, yeah, creatine, dude, for sure. Yeah. And creatine is amazing because I think a lot of people, when they do creatine, they're like, oh, I want to build some muscles. But I think that's the reason I was sold on it. It was like, oh, it's going to help your mind.
Yeah, that's what surprised me about what Nick wrote. Because in my early 20s, I went through a brief weightlifting, period where I was into it. And I took creatine very briefly, and it did help me get stronger. But I hadn't even heard about the cognitive benefits.
Right. And I've definitely, because as a supplement, it's a little hard for me to just be like, okay, I'm, N1 study group.
Right.
And I can tell you anecdotally, it's helped me. But like when I look around at the studies are pretty unambiguous. And then I have friends now who've been doing it. It's like, oh yeah, this is a really helpful thing.
Yeah. And Nick, of course, being a medical doctor, but I mean, obviously caveats applied. Do your own research. This is a chess podcast. Don't run and do something because two dudes said so. But it's something that I personally am more inclined to dig into, because as I commented to Nick when he wrote that, I have like a knee-jerk aversion to supplements. I mean, I take some vitamins each day, but I'm always skeptical because there's so many snake oil salesmen and you always worry about side effects. But I think you guys might be onto something.
Well, okay. So I am also somebody who is not like I don't try it the first, any new thing. I'm not the first user. But one thing that fascinates me about as a chess fan is I am convinced that players at the top are, if they're not using it, they're at least experimenting with a variety of supplements and actually just pure drugs to help their mind. And, of course, I'm an older generation, so it doesn't really matter for me that much. But I interviewed kind of just, here and there at the latest Washington International. I asked some kids in their 20s. I was like, "Do you guys use the Adderall? What do you guys use and stuff?" And it's interesting. And they all basically were like, especially in college, I was using the Adderall.
Uh-huh.
And so I think Adderall, that kind of drug, is going to help. I'm just saying, as a fan, I know this is being experimented with, and I feel like I know it because of the Lance Armstrong thing, right? Like if you can get an edge, there's somebody who's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And so interestingly enough, I guess in October now, I'm gonna be a player and Jim Conti is gonna be the commentator, and we're all gonna take this drug before the games, dude.
Oh, wow.
Play this little tournament. And so I don't know if this drug is called mental athlete or something. I have no idea if it's going to work, but I am convinced that there are going to be drugs that will help, whether it's 5%, 10%. I mean, 5% would be a huge gain, especially imagine like Sinkfield Cup or something. And, you talk to people, and one of the funny things about the drug conversation is always like, well, as long as they're not cheating with the computer.
Right.
That's the one that really freaks people out. If you just think about other sports, performance enhancing drugs, it's got to happen in chess sooner or later. Yeah. I assume it's already happening. I just don't know how to use the drugs myself.
Right. And the incentives are not as high for you. I mean, you're not playing, you're not trying to, elevate yourself into, like, the difference between being 10th in the world and first in the world is like, 80,000 a year to millions, so
sure.
I think you're probably right that people are probably experimenting. And of course, from the government side, just wish you would want the clearest guidelines possible and everything to be out in the open to the extent that it can. I mean, something like Adderall, I think, is probably banned, at least at the professional, like elite level, but certainly at the like weekend grinder, they're not drug testing or anything like that. And Jesse, I've noticed your bicycle in the background, both in prior interviews in here. Is that just for show, or is that part of your regimen too?
I love that bicycle. I've had it for a while. I used to do a lot of long distance bike riding. I still do a little bit. I love that thing. It wasn't just exercise, just being out there and doing, I used to do 200Ks, 400Ks, 600Ks, and it was just a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, now I haven't been riding as much recently.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've underscored the importance of fitness, can't emphasize it enough. And Dr. Nick's Vasquez's blog is called Chess in Small Doses. So be sure to sub. But he also talked about, of course, the importance of sleep, sugar intake, stuff like that, which also can't be overlooked. But we should probably talk about some actual chess too.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to the dojo. I mean, it's been 5 years since we've chatted. You guys have made so many upgrades. The community has grown a lot. What have you learned as like the presenter, as a sensei in those 5 years about chess improvement? What have been the biggest lessons?
Well, it's funny. I was about to say that 40 games a year was a big thing. And then you told me it was all a lie and you had misquoted Donaldson. And now we brought it into the program. And now I got to rethink the whole thing.
And that might be an extra 10.
By the way, I still feel pretty good about the 40 games, but
well, that's the thing is you can't let, that's where I run into this trouble. You can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. But anyway, go on.
Right. So I think, playing classical game, it's still mostly the same in terms of my basic belief systems, right? Where you have to play longer games. Even if you want to be a good blitz player, you have to play longer games and you have to look at those games probably first with a human eye. You can look at with the computer later. You got to be doing some challenging puzzles for your cohort. Right, you perfect your chess is only for like 2,300 plus. We got books for people who are lower than that. Right, you need to be doing sparring with openings and end games and stuff like that. And we've learned some things. I think it's been a conversation with you too. We did a whole extended podcast thing on all your subjects in the Perpetual Chess podcast book, and so whether it's puzzles or blitz or all these other kind of things. Maybe I've come a little bit around on blitz. I used to be
you mentioned that in your recent pod. Yeah.
I'm more 100% against it. I think what's interesting now is the computer has now become so strong. We just did a pod about, like what does 3,700 FIDE mean?
Right.
Because one of the fascinating things is you can play like a blitz game at queen odds and you're not going to win 100% of the time. And many super GMs have lost with the queen odds, dude. And it's like, oh my God, this is wholly next level. Anyways, you got this beast, it's 3,700. Anyone can access it. And so if you play a blitz game, as long as you kind of look at what the engine tells you afterwards, it's going to expand your mind about what's going on in chess. So I feel like I've come around maybe a little bit on that with blitz. And that was interesting in your book because you were like, I'm about to do a heresy here. I'm going to say blitz is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to hear you mention that in the recent, and we were talking about it briefly before we recorded, Jesse's heresy, except I pronounced it wrong. Did I say it right that time?
Well, it's heresy. It's not
heresy. Jesse's heresy. This is for Dojo Talks, which of course you guys should be sub to. And I always remind myself when you mispronounce something, it's because you read it, So, so I don't feel bad about butchering words left and right. But I was surprised to even hear you say that because I felt like even for you, like that is so established at this point that I mean, again, as I say in my book and as I stand by, I do think at the lower level, say below 1,500, blitz can be counterproductive. But clearly when you reach intermediate, 17, 1,800 on up, it's clearly a good way to practice openings at bare minimum and probably very good for your pattern recognition. And the micro skills, as James Altucher talks about, of like time management, you're learning it in a condensed setting. So maybe you can, or I can be less slow in a classical game. So yeah, I felt like it's like settled science at this point.
Okay.
And so you mentioned this in the context of reading Willy Hendriks. I know you've been doing a deep dive on his reading. What else has struck you from what he's written?
Well, I think the really interesting thing about Hendriks's work is something I'm still struggling with. And that is the idea that not just chess, but humans in general, their learning is not something where You have somebody, let's say like Petrosian, and he's going to go deep and he's going to make these deep, meaningful, strategic moves, dude, because he's a genius and he's penetrating into the position. He's like, Hendriks is like, no, boss, that's not the way it's going. It's going because people are mimicking what other players are doing. And this is not just in chess. It's like, he's not like, he gives a good example of the boat builder. And he's like, this boat did not get built because some genius like Petrosian happened to figure this boat out. No, a bunch of boats were built and some sank. Some boats had specific functions. They worked and other people copied them, the ones that didn't sink. So it's a different view of human intelligence and the way it works. And it's kind of a sad view, honestly, because I like, the idea of Petrosian or me or Nimzovich coming to some kind of deep understanding of what chess is. It's romantic. It's romantic and beautiful to think that way. It's great to sit in front of a position and really try to get at what's going on, to name it. So I still feel like that's the heart of the way I see chess. But I did think it was a very valuable viewpoint that dude brought to the table. And I dismissed it at first. I think like a lot of people, that move first, think later thing. I was like, come on, bro, I'm not going to read that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
And I got into him actually from the historical works that he's done. He's done all these great books on chess history. And the crazy thing about those historical books is they come with an agenda. And I didn't even realize it really till I was a couple books in.
Right.
Like, oh, the agenda is to show that Nimzovich isn't some great creator. He was just copying people, bud.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating because it was like, this is a dude who went on such a quest that he had to write these history books to prove his point.
Yeah, but he's compelling. Yeah, but I do love that there's like a through line in all his work. That's hard.
Right,
That's hard to do in chess.
Very much so.
But yeah, I mean, I do find it overall convincing. And, I talked about this a little, like when I read Sam Khan, who does this great Century of Chess column. And he loves that idea that you were describing of like Nimzowitsch would say like, well, this is how I think chess should be played. And Tarrasch would say like, this is how I think chess should be played.
Right.
And, Alyekin would have his own ideas. And whenever these two people with competing ideas played, it's like a lab, and unfortunately, as Hendriks has written, that was probably exaggerated historically, and more to the point, whether that's true or not, which I think is to an extent up for debate, it clearly isn't what happens anymore. Now it's just like everything's kind of like this giant melting pot. And as you say, people, I love the boat building analogy. People do more of what works and less of what doesn't, whatever their influences are.
Right.
And on the topic of books, Jesse, we got a Patreon question that I thought was a really good question. So thank you to Wayne Beam for helping to support Perpetual Chess. And he said, hey, Sensei, you talk about the book Thinking Fast and Slow a lot, and you had a video about the book Deep Work. Any other non-chess books that you apply to chess?
I've read a lot of books that I feel, that kind of seep into it. There's a book that I don't know if I liked it that much, but it's called Mindset.
Oh, yeah.
By
Carol Dweck. Yeah, that was like the OG book. I feel like time has passed that. I mean, it was a great thesis, but it's a little thin. I haven't read it for a long time. But I mean, certainly the idea is like, I love that, like my kids who are 9 and 12, they're being taught what a growth mindset is in school. Like they have a word for it. And, that's because of her work. So I greatly appreciate that. And then for listeners not familiar, the idea is basically just that you can have a growth or a fixed mindset. A growth mindset means that your traits are not static. You can get better at things. And if you're struggling with your math homework, you might either say like, I'm bad at math or I need to work on my math based on whether you have a fixed or a growth mindset. So that was laid out all those years ago. And I think that's fantastic. But the book itself, I could take or leave. But I actually, I hadn't seen you mention Deep Work by Cal Newport. So did you do a video review of that book?
Yeah, I a video of all these.
All my talk about my love for your reviews and I missed it. What's the... What's the Cliff Notes? I read the book, but what's the Cliff Notes of the review?
Well, I think one of the things, there's a lot of it, but that was very, if things maybe you feel like right, we're going to like really dial it in and turn it into a habit. Actually, I can combine it with this other question that your Patreon
Yeah,
Let me
I'll
read
go.
this other one actually, because so this
Okay.
is from Nahul Marisi, and they say, "Are books as effective as modern digital tools for chess improvement? Is there any evidence either way?" So I want to bring this in to the deep work because you brought up the deep work. So first of all, let's talk about how digital tools are amazing. First of all, you got a coach right there who's 3,700 and can tell you some amazing things. You can have access to other players online, whether it's like finding sparring partners at the dojo or playing GMs on Chess.com or Lee Chess or whatever, right? So you can do chessable stuff. You can do all this stuff online, and that's great. But the thing that deep work is on about that I do believe is that for really significant improvement, you got to be away from the screen.
Yeah.
The screen is an evil beast, and it's very difficult to do deep thinking. We're talking about actually thinking fast and slow. You cannot be doing very deep thinking in front of a screen. You think you're immune to it, but there's going to become a little notification, a little thing, or when your mind starts wandering, boom, you're going to go be like, oh, I'll check my email or I'll check this, I'll take a little break. And then, 4 hours later, you're done.
Right.
Um, so that was a thing about deep work that I really appreciated that I've tried to bring into my practice. In particular, if I'm studying, well, the first couple hours in the morning and then just shut the computer out, So that was my big take home message of deep work. And also just that you need a specified time to be doing your work. And then at a certain point, you got to just totally shut it out. Like around 5 or 6 at night, you'd be like, Boss, I'm done. I'm not going to look at my email anymore. I'm not going to have any of that anxiety. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. Yeah. So that's the TLDR on the deep work.
Yeah, yeah. And I do remember the book by Cal Newport, and it's really ahead of its time because I feel like that book's probably like 10 years old. And yeah, the distractions have only grown since then. And,
Right.
there was recently an article, book readings down like 10%, like 10%, like only 16% of the population has like finished a book in the last year or something like that. So it's deeply disturbing that, that people are doing so little deep work. But I'm curious, Jesse, with your own routine, because we're both similar in that we're self-employed and kind of work like we were emailing over the weekend. We're both emailing over the weekend, but then during the week we might have to run off and like do something with our kids or something like that. We're not working 9 to 5. With you putting all this time into chess, do you have set hours for it, or is it more like the hours that are free each day?
I really tried to have those morning hours, That's really what I want. That's one of the reasons I got to get up so early. One of the reasons it's then challenging to play those nighttime rounds.
Yeah.
Getting those morning hours in before the sun is up, before the kids start, yelling and screaming, that kind of thing.
And what about the exercise regimen?
I've been doing, I feel very fit right now. I mean, that just, when you're an older dude, you'll go through little waves. You'll get injured or something weird will happen. But right now I'm feeling great. I've been doing a lot of weightlifting, spending time outside. I'm not good at pickleball. I played pickleball last night, but that's just like to be outside moving.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Cardio stuff going on. So yeah, I feel great. And, just every day I'll do something, whether it's lifting or cardio, yeah.
Then you do. So when you first, like you've definitely gotten fitter over, say, the past 8 years. Do you feel a difference at the board?
Well, let me just say fitter. Yes, I feel pretty good right now, but I'm 53. 53, Ben. There is a curve that's going downward. Ultimately, like I can make some gains in my chest, but we shouldn't kid ourselves. The mind and the body are slowly dying.
Yeah.
Right? So at the moment, like I'm at a good little high note and I'm going to try to keep it going as long as possible. Yeah. And I know that like when I did really well at the US Senior Close 24, I'm playing these legends. It's part of it is they're totally out of shape, completely out of shape. And of course, that's going to affect how you play. How long can you concentrate? Huge problem.
I wonder if it'll change at all because, like, when the year that Malek Kachin won it, I spoke with him after. He was not playing quite as actively as Alex. You guys mentioned this in your dojo talks too, but playing more actively. Alex, obviously, incredible work ethic and plays a ton. Grandmaster Alex Fishbein, and you very on top of chess. You might not get to 40 or 50 games depending on how the year goes, but like in chess every day. I wonder if there's going to be kind of a correction where some of these legends that like Joel Benjamin and Shabalov plays here and there, Christensen. Like I wonder if they'll make more of a conscious effort because it's showing so clearly the importance of playing. And again, I find this interesting because these were my heroes growing up. I'm from that generation, but I also just think that's a big lesson for whatever your rating is, just the importance of playing regularly. But it'll be interesting. Maybe you'll have your work cut out for you if it finally inspires some of the other legends to tune up a little bit more.
No, not those guys. Those guys are done. But I will say what's interesting about all of these senior events is you're getting a lot of people who are very committed as improvers. And so there's this interesting trend where you get people who, like me, they're inspired to play these senior events because they're cool and it's something to work for. And honestly, if you don't have something to work for and you're 50 plus, you're probably just ready to die. Right. So you need something to keep you going. And so you have this huge community of older players like me who are training pretty hard.
Yeah.
You know? And like the state champion, if you win your senior state championship, you go to the Irwin, and that's a cool event. So people are training for that. And they're like, oh, that's something I want to do. And I feel like, I don't know if how many of those players are going to be able to compete, let's say, with the legends. But what I'm seeing is they are trying. And I feel like, as time marches on, like Larry Christensen, dude, that guy's a genius. But it's not there anymore. And he doesn't have the energy or the fitness to do it. And the same thing goes with really a lot of the other guys. They can still play great chess now and then, right? But they don't have the fitness or the stamina to go for it in the same way that a lot of these other seniors who are, like Doug Eckert, that guy's
I thought of him. Yeah.
There's a bunch of guys like that, they're rated 2,200, but they got fire and they're working on it, they're doing work every day.
Yeah. Doug Eckert, I interviewed, you guys should have him on Dojo Talks at some point. I interviewed him some years ago. He's retired in his mid-50s as an accountant. He's a member of Jakob Aagaard's training cohort. Right. And he's putting in multiple hours, playing all over the place. And he's had some great results too. I haven't tracked his rating, but he's like, and James Altucher, another example. And they also, these guys show how hard it is because even with all that work, I know James, for those of you who listen to, he's done some chess interviews, but he also talks about it in a non-chess context. And he's just been floored by how hard he's working and still, like as you alluded to, swimming upstream, and you're still fighting Father Time. It's tough. And what else is going on in the dojo, Jesse? So you guys launched a new basically UI a few months ago. What features did that have?
Well, it's constantly evolving, and we have a pretty cool developer who is helping us, has done for years. And so, we got all kinds of little features coming out. We just developed a new UI where you really get to see your daily and weekly view in a much clearer way. We got this cool new time management rating. So we're giving people, and I did it for Gukesh because Gukesh has got some problems, did a video on that as an example. So, we give you a sense of what your time problem is. Actually, to bring it back to like, let's say Deep Work or any of these other books, the reason we did is I do a weekly graduation show where I see somebody, let's say they go to from the 600, 700 cohort to 700, 800. And I was just seeing time and again that these players aren't able to use their time, even if it's like a 30-30 game, right? And it's interesting is like, they can't concentrate. They're not able to concentrate. So we developed like the time management rating to be like, hey, look, you have a rating of 0 because you use 0 time. So it gives people like just an immediate sense of what's going on.
That's amazing. So it does that with your online games?
You can do it online games or your OTB as long as you have the times logged in somehow.
So you can input the times, man. That's what. Maybe that's still getting like tying together our conversations. I'm 48, and as I've mentioned many times in the past, it's been like a year now, just struggling to motivate to put in the work. But the senior circuit looms, as you alluded to, and maybe because that time thing is exactly what I need.
Well, think about it. I think you'll be an interesting example because you can win let's say you can win the New Jersey Senior Championship, and then that'll take you to the Irwin, and that'll be a cool event. You can play U.S. Senior Open. You can even go to like the U.S. World.
The senior.
That's another cool event that I haven't been able to go to yet, but that's another thing, that's out there as a fun event to do.
Yeah. And with those well, before we get to that, so as it happens, recent guests, both Alex Fishbein and Max Farbarov and you all played the Washington International.
Right.
I saw your result was decent, but any other takeaways from that tournament?
Well, okay, so that was an interesting challenge for me. That was definitely growth mindset because I've been traumatized by the Indian kids. I was traumatized by playing at night, and I was like Ben Johnson says I got to play 40 games a year, and I got to play against strong opposition. So here we go. Let's go deep dive into it. First round, I'm playing some Indian kid, and I'm traumatized. And so I was like, oh, this is something like in my head. This is something I have to overcome.
Approach, don't avoid.
Yeah. So that was like a thing. And actually, Fishbein at the tournament told me some great advice. He was like, listen, when you play these Indian kids, let's say they're rated 2100 or whatever, don't be afraid of a draw. That doesn't mean you have to make a draw. That just means you can't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Because normally, like you're a GM, you're playing at 2100, you're like, okay, I got to put on the gas here. I got to do some crazy stuff to win this game. I'm going to take some chances. And Fishbein was like, when he told me that, I was like, oh, right. And not only that, but like it creates trauma because you do something crazy and then you get burned by this little Indian kid and you're like, oh my God, my life is over. It just gets worse and worse. It spirals. So anyways, I won some nice games. I was in contention for first at the end of round 7. But then I kind of fell apart. Maybe I didn't have the energy. I don't know. But still, it was a great event for me to go and do a 9-round or 2 rounds a day kind of thing. I hadn't done that in a long time. I'm going to play the U.S. Masters in Charlotte.
Oh, wow.
Thanksgiving. Cool. That'll be a similar 9-round event,
That's a monstrous field. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to me, like before, what was I doing? I was like, oh, I'll play this 5-rounder and I'll take a bye in round 1 because I can't play at night, so in that way, I'd play maybe 1 or 2 Indian kids and not play any IMs or GMs. But like you play an event like that, you're like, finally. And that's what I need. I need to play the IMs and the GMs round after round, and fight through it.
Yeah. Approach, don't avoid, by the way, being the timeless advice of one of the many things that resonates from these interviews over the years that Joel Sneed uses as a mantra, but like the rest of us, it's harder to say, easier to say than to live. So you've got that coming up November. Anything before then, Jesse?
Maybe some small stuff, but that's the main thing I want to do. And I got to get those 40 games in because you told me to.
Except it's 50.
I really like, so it's interesting with the training program, little things actually mean a lot. So now, for example, we have this thing called a heat map. And so you can see what you've done. And you can see like what category of thing you've done, a little different color for openings than for tactics, for example. And so just looking at that, like, right, this is the history of what I'm doing. And if I have a couple of days that go by without me doing anything, I'm like, right, you're blowing it, right? So that's cool. But also, we have this 40 game minimum kind of thing. And that's staring at me in the face every time I go there too. And it's like beautiful because like, right, Jesse, you cannot improve just you studying in the morning or something. Nobody. You got to go out there and you got to play the real people. You can't be playing just some chumps in some weekend Swiss, Yeah.
Well, playing some chumps is better than playing no chumps. And Jesse, last thing before I let you go, one book review of yours that I did catch. So you reviewed this fiction book, Intermezzo. Now, in our very first interview, not even the one 5 years ago before that, we talked about Jesse's novel. So Jesse, obviously well qualified to discuss this, but I think I'm not getting it together to do a separate podcast about this.
Yeah.
But maybe we can do like 5-10 minutes on it because I enjoyed your review and I had some thoughts from a chess perspective as well. But for listeners who don't care about this book by this literary sensation, young Irish superstar novelist Sally Rooney called Intermezzo, you could probably safely turn off the pod. But Jesse, I saw your review and you keyed in on a few things. Like I didn't notice well, I guess we should first of all, just give sort of a big picture description of what the book's about. Do you want to do that, or I can? It's up to you.
You go for it.
Okay. Yeah, and I had to brush up because for you it's been a few months. For me, it's been about 1 month since I read it. But it's like a people in their 20s literary novel. 20s and 30s, you could basically say. The primary characters are 2 brothers. The younger one, who is 22, is a chess master. And chess is very much a part of the novel. So this is why I think some chess players gravitated towards this, besides Sally Rooney's award-winning fame. So he's kind of like a semi-lapsed chess player, playing, not playing, but very revered in his community, was considered like an Irish hotshot who's fallen back a little bit. And he has an older brother, Peter, who's a 36-year-old, I think, lawyer who's like balancing relationships with two different women. So you have like a sort of polyamory theme there. The 22-year-old takes up a romantic relationship with a mid-30s. He actually meets her after doing, this is not like vital plot points, so I don't mind giving it away, but he meets her actually doing a simul. So she at like a local chess club. And so she's like describing the local chess club. So a lot of the novel is about sort of A, romance, but B, relationship dynamics and families and dating across generations and stuff like that. So you shared a few thoughts about the book, but did you like the book?
I felt like some of the writing, just in terms of literature, was great. I thought there was some interesting things about reading a younger novelist. So, for example, it was interesting to read somebody younger than me who has a different perspective on the world. As an example, I'm seriously dating a psychologist now, and so I'm getting tuned into all these, deep dives on different psychological traits and behaviors. And I could tell from reading this book that Sally Rooney is all into it too. Like the descriptions of various people, you can be like, oh, this person clearly has a little bit of autism. She's
right, which I didn't catch so sorry to cut you off, but just a brief clarification. The 22-year-old FM chess player is described at one point in the book. His brother says he's kind of autistic, but he clearly is a little shy, if nothing else. But I didn't have that in my head until I saw your review and then went back and read about it. But sorry, please continue.
Right. Or, OCD or all these other things that people have. It's part of the language now of the way this younger generation talks about the world. So that was already kind of interesting to me because, I come from an older generation of literature where that just wasn't part of the picture. Right. And now, she's trying to really get a whole spectrum of people with these conditions out there.
Yeah. A few other things to tell people who are maybe on the fence about reading the book. It's very steamy. It's really there's like it felt like a 15-page sex scene at one point. Like she's very very into the weeds in terms of how this relationship develops and how the other relationships develop. As you say, she's an amazing writer, and I enjoyed it overall. Would definitely give it like 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. But for me, a primary point of interest was the chess beats. And what really impressed me about this book is I really felt like she got the chess world right. I didn't catch any errors. She wasn't just like tossing out opening names that were out of context. Did you catch anything where you felt like this doesn't ring true to my impression of the chess world?
Yeah, it didn't resonate me with in a way I felt like, oh, I'm being described here.
Oh, really?
No, I didn't really feel that at all. And I felt like making the kid a little bit autistic was a cheap way of doing what a lot of people do when they look into the chess world from the outside. They're like, oh, these geeky, nerdy kids, obviously got a little socially awkward autistic thing going on.
But you don't think there's a grain of truth to that stereotype?
Definitely we have autistic players in the chess world, but especially there's only very few who've done really well with it, who've actually ended up competing and being successful. That's actually much rarer in my experience. But also it just felt kind of cheap as like, the stereotypical thing that you could say about a chess.
I get that, but I do feel like chess attracts introverts. I mean, you're sitting in your room studying to become good at it. So maybe there's like a selection bias in getting better. So I get that being potentially autistic might be like a bit of a trope. I see what you're saying. But on the other hand, I do feel like there are these character traits that you do find more often in the chess world. A couple other things. I felt like the dynamic she described where the young master goes to give a simul at the local chess club and he's sort of very revered by the local people. I felt like that rang true when he described he had like a love-hate relationship with chess where he's revered by this community, but also sort of feels like he's terrible. He would tell Margaret, his love interest, like, I'm not even that good, and there was a point where she described or he described his pursuit of the IM title and like all of the norms that it would require. And she got like all those beats right. I mean, maybe I just hold people to a very low bar after all of the chess films and fiction that have come out over the years. But I was
Yeah.
just impressed that she got all these little details right.
Yeah.
But
The
like,
other thing that rubbed me wrong, maybe the thing especially that I really disliked, again, there's some good sentences in this book, but the thing I really disliked was, in the current, in this, I'm an older generation, but for her generation, there's this whole thing of like the manosphere. So dudes
yeah,
who go to college who don't have access to, let's say literature and yada yada culture, and who've kind of on their own and they're just trying to make it, they're kind of getting beat down. And then you have the educated class, right? Such as Sally Rooney, right? The author, who is then going to kind of look down on what these people are doing and saying. And then the way I ended up reading the book at the end was like, oh, this is a Bildungsroman. This is something where we're seeing this poor Ivan character and his brother being educated about what it means to be a man from her perspective. And I was like, no, this isn't cool. You're talking down. You're talking down. I'm fine with talking about gender and doing all kinds of fun stuff, but there was a tone of I'm talking down to this thing from a higher perspective. Yeah, and I didn't like that at all. And, I'm not a Trumper or anything, but if I was, I'd be like, this is offensive. This is just offensive, dude. You're gonna take some moral high ground on this? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a problem. And it's also uninteresting as literature. It's like I want a real person. I don't want somebody you're trying to turn into something, the raw clay, you're gonna turn into something else. Come on now, Sally. You can do better than that. Yeah.
wow, that's fascinating. I did not share that impression. I mean, I get what you're saying. Both of the male leads, as it were, are maladjusted in their own ways, but it's very different ways.
Yeah.
In that the younger chess player is more socially, he's shyer, and this is like his second real relationship at 22. But the brother is more of like a womanizer, so kind of like the opposite end of the extreme. But I get what you're saying. And I mean, I can see what you're saying, even if I don't fully agree in that, like, neither are what we'd call exemplary male role models for 22, 30-year-olds. And maybe
you don't have to, your characters don't have to be exemplary. I'm not saying that, but like if you're going to take a particular kind of person you don't like and try to turn them into something else through your moral high ground, then it's like,
right.
Come on now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So overall, I would say, if you're on the fence about reading it, be prepared for some steaming romance scenes. But for me, I've talked about this before, but I'm so deep in the chess world that to see like one of what's considered to be one of the world's leading observers of her generation, one of the most sort of incisive describers of especially Ireland, but she's very popular in the US as well, of the world, to see her describe the chess world, to see her come from the outside, try to sort of learn the lay of the land. And in interviews, she said her husband or her partner, I'm not sure if she's actually married, like got into chess during the pandemic. And that's what sort of set her off. And in the acknowledgments, she mentioned talking, like getting to know some people in the Ireland Chess Club. And that's sort of how she made sure she got all the beats right. So if you want to see how the chess world is perceived outside of the bubble, I felt like Jesse's critiques notwithstanding, I felt like it's useful in that regard.
You also have to be ready for these two male leads to like say they're sorry just about every paragraph. I'm sorry.
I didn't pick up on that either. I saw you mention it in your video.
When I think about that, I think about like a cold Irish weather and some dude just saying he's sorry, very sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. And so we asked you from a sort of learning chess improvement perspective, any book recs, but any other book recs before we go, Jesse, whether it be chess or non-chess?
I think for the history, the Hendriks books that have come out, the great series, I reviewed those. As mentioned, the turbocharged books are great.
But very advanced, as you say in the
very
video.
Advanced.
Yeah.
Right? Very advanced. Just maybe an old shout out is we're coming to understand at the dojo that the what we call the Polgar mates and twos, we're statistically correlating that to rating gain.
Wow.
Whether you're a GM or you're 300 is just the pattern recognition and the ability to get a grip on the board. Like what's hitting what's, so that book is interesting. It's like, the more we work with it, it's like, oh, that's really crushing. Actually, another book that we statistically correlated was the ancient book, Chernev's Logical Chess, Move by Move.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Especially in like the 1100, 1200 cohort, people are just crushing with that book.
Yeah,
it's
such
like
a classic.
a first strategic book,
Yeah.
how to think about strategy.
Totally timeless. That's interesting. You must feel vindicated with the Polgar book because you've been a fan for so long.
I feel like I understood that from a different perspective when I did it. I was like, and I still feel like these are the layups of chess, and this is something you need to know, yada, yada. But I didn't appreciate the whole thing where especially beginners need to develop a grip on the board. So like if you're like in this, I do these graduation shows every week, and so if you are under, let's say 1250 chess.com, right around there, you're going to be dropping pieces all the time. And what I came to understand is it's not even tactics that these people need. They need a grip on the board. Like which piece is attacking which piece? How can they see it? And that book is like, oh, I'm sure there's other ways to do it too, but that book is like, oh, we're dialing it in. Right.
Yeah. It's good. Okay. Well, Jesse, it's been too long, but I'm sure we'll chat again one of these days when I get it together, be more involved in the dojo, and hopefully see you at a tournament.
I'm going to see you at those senior tournaments, buddy.
Exactly. If nothing else, I got 2 years to before then, but hopefully I can start warming up before then. All right. So listeners know where to go to check out the Chess Dojo, and be sure to sub to Dojo Talks and their YouTube channel. And that's about it, right, Jesse?
That's it.
Okay. Thanks as always.